Well, I'm Dane, and this is Dane Explains. For hundreds of years, scholars have generally believed Jesus was born in 4 BC. That year hinges mostly in the writings of Josephus, who writes about the death of King Herod. As most know, King Herod is the king who was responsible for the decree to put the boy infants to death in order to try to kill Jesus, which would put Jesus' birth in 4 BC at the latest. Well, they missed something that puts the date into question, and I think any farmer would have caught it. Let me explain why. The 4 BC date is generally accepted by scholars as the year Jesus was born. Of course, there is some debate ranging from 4 BC to 1 AD. The guy who came up with the 1 AD date, and as a consequence set the epoch year for the Julian and later Gregorian calendars, was Dionysius Exiguus. Unfortunately, he doesn't mention how he concluded what year exactly Jesus was born on. He just mentions it was 525 years before the present year. The issue with calculating the exact year is there's a lot of ambiguity in the dates in early writings. Many people have tried to date Jesus' birth through one passage in the Gospels where it states that Jesus was about 30 when his ministry began. Well, about 30 isn't that precise, and we'd need to know what year Jesus started his ministry. One way to do it is to put upper and lower bounds on when Jesus could have been born, because the birth dates and reigns of different people are corroborated outside of the Bible, and we can look to those. We know King Herod died when Jesus was young, although an exact age is not given, but Jesus could have been up to 2 years old when Herod tried to have Jesus killed, because the biblical account says Herod's order targeted boys up to 2 years of age. So we can help narrow down Jesus' birth year by figuring out when Herod died, and many people have done just that, going way back centuries. The good thing about Herod's death is that we don't have to go on some iffy dates, because Josephus says there was a lunar eclipse shortly before Herod's death. The 4 BC date goes all the way back to Johannes Kepler. Yes, that Kepler. Although he wasn't the first person to propose it, he used the eclipse to calculate the year of Herod's death to 4 BC. Why he picked that particular eclipse is hard to say. It could have been based on other guesswork. Oddly, Kepler also said Jesus' birth could be on 2 BC because he interpreted the Star of Bethlehem to be a conjunction, which he calculated to that date. There are issues with the 4 BC date, however. One educated guesswork places the eclipse to 4 BC by assuming Jesus was about 33 when he died, and that the Tetrarch Philip, who was one of the successors of King Herod, and is mentioned in the Gospels, died in the year of 34, which can be cross-referenced to the 20th year of Tiberius' reign. The issue is, all the documents that say that only appear after the 1500s, and earlier documents seem to indicate it was the 22nd year of Tiberius' reign, so more like 1 or 2 BC. Also, many people think that Philip's reign may have been backdated a few years before Herod's death to make Philip look more competent. There's a detail that I've never seen mentioned that may help us. Josephus accounts that between the time of the eclipse and Herod's death, he tries to commit suicide with a knife he was using to pare an apple. If that were the case, the eclipse that the scholars propose for the 4 BC date of Herod's death, which is in March, wouldn't work. What's the issue? The apple. In the northern hemisphere, apples ripen from August until November, and, without preservation, only last a month maximum, especially in the climate of the Middle East. Refrigeration was still almost 2,000 years away. We're basically drying, salting, or fermenting. Since Herod was paring an apple, it's pretty clear the apple was at least somewhat fresh, so clearly this couldn't happen in March. Most likely this event occurred in the September to December time frame, when apples were available. So, what eclipse happens in that time frame and in a year that matches? Well, a lot of them, quite frankly. However, unlike with Kepler, with modern computers, we can know exactly how each eclipse worked, and if it was even visible from Jerusalem. If you assume the eclipse was easily visible, it narrows things down by a lot. And by a lot, I mean 3 eclipses. To September 15th, 5 BC, January 10th, 1 BC, and October 29th, 3 AD. Of course, none of these dates work perfectly with any of the other dates in the writings. But when people use words like about when describing people's ages, this is about as accurate as you can get. Well, what do I think? Well, I think the 5 BC date is too early. People wouldn't have been saying Philip began his reign in 4 BC if it could have been 5. And that also puts Jesus' chronology a bit too far out when you sync it with his ministry, which was 30 years after his birth. The 1 BC and 3 AD dates both seem possible, although the 1 BC date does fit better with historical writings. But if you go back to the biblical account, it doesn't seem Jesus is still a baby when the Holy Family returns from Egypt. They were obviously back by the time he was 12, as was recorded in the Bible. So, in my opinion, the date of Herod's death, being 1 BC, doesn't fit, while giving the Holy Family enough time to flee, settle, uproot, and come back. It seems more likely to me that Jesus would have been born close to the 1 BC or AD date, giving Herod a year or 2 to die while they were away in Egypt. As to what the exact day of the year was, I already did a video on that. Watch it after this one. Thank you for watching. If you like this video and other topics ranging from theology to science, please press the like button. Subscribe to my channel and ding the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon to get extra content and special perks. Link in the description. The more people who support me, the more time I can dedicate to making videos like this one. So, until next time, have a great week.